Cool, cool. All right. Let's get this started, shall we? Yeah, yeah. All right, perfect. So, I want to start by talking about the time that I opened a car rental business. It was an interesting period of my life. I was about 19 years old, 19 or so. It had to be, yes, it was before 2020 because that's what fucked everything up. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another live stream. I am practicing now on multi streaming on Twitch and YouTube, so I'm still working on the setups. Oh, look at that, bro. Oh, damn. It's looking juicy, baby. I remember when I fucking lost that business, I was so overweight, and I promised myself I could never be overweight again. Depression got to me, but anyway, I'm jumping. I have to take a chill pill, right? And make sure that I can tell the story in a chronological order. So, I opened my first business ever in 2018. I remember I wanted to open something car related. I already had my channel, my Gran Turismo channel, and at the time I was doing videos in Spanish. I decided to transition now into English, and I'm so glad I did that because now the opportunities have opened up even more. Now that I started filming in English, I'm able to connect with other people, to collaborate with other people, to interview people. I mean, ever since I started making the videos in English, the doors have opened up a lot. I wanted it to seriously just stop, to seriously just stay with Spanish videos, but I have been able to make more progress in the past 2 months making videos in English than I did probably the past 2 years making videos in Spanish, right? And I remember at the time I wanted to open a business. Anyone who has always dreamed of achieving that financial freedom, we're always looking for ways to make extra money here and there. And I wanted to open my first business. It had to be something car related so that I could incorporate it into the channel. And I decided to open a car rental business using Turo, which is a platform that is still very popular today. However, I don't know how people are making money out of Turo because it's not as profitable as I remember how it used to be. But anyway, we're talking about 2018, 2019 or so. And I remember seeing so many videos on how to start a car rental business, how to open an LLC, how to deal with taxes, blah, blah, blah. Every time I would talk with people about me opening my car rental business, they would tell me that I was crazy. Crazy, right? Every person out there who has dreamed of opening their own business or become an entrepreneur or just do something out of the ordinary, I'm pretty sure we've all been called crazy so many times, right? So many times. Because people tend to be scared, right? It's something that they would never do for themselves, so they try to put you down. So just think about that. You have to learn that you have to come to the realization that once you start a business, you will be called crazy. People will doubt you. People will tell you that what you're doing is a waste of time, that you should just stick to your 9 to 5. And that's fine, okay? It's part of life. It's part of becoming an entrepreneur. It's part of opening your own business. People will always doubt you, right? And that's fine, especially your close family members. And I don't think it's because they actually want for you to not, progress in life, for you to not succeed in life. It's because they want to protect you, right? Especially your mom or your dad or your siblings. They are just trying to protect you because they don't see the vision that you have, right? They have never thought of opening their own business. And if they thought about opening their own business, they probably got too scared and they decided to put those dreams away and, never talk about it. So usually the closest people to you are the ones that are gonna doubt you. Your closest friends, your own siblings, your own mom, your own dad, your own grandparents, and it sucks, right? But such is life. That's part of life. So I remember opening my first business. I remember spending hours doing my research online, trying to see what worked the best. I was living in the state of New Mexico at the time. So I had to adjust the cars that I was going to buy to the state of New Mexico. And what do I mean by that? The state of New Mexico has a lot of dirt roads, right? So you don't want to buy a luxury car. It's a car that, it's a state that usually people go and see the mountains or hike or go to museums, things like that, right? So you have to study your market. You have to study the place where you're opening your business, right? In California, there are so many rental places that will rent you a McLaren, a Lamborghini, Ferrari, right? Because that's what people are looking to do here. They want to have that flashy lifestyle. They want to rent a Lamborghini and start posting thousands of pictures on the internet, right? Or for people to sell you their courses. Well, in the state of New Mexico, it's a lot of dirt roads. So you are not going to be buying an S-Class, right? Because it's going to get destroyed. The suspension is going to get destroyed. But at the same time, I wanted to find something that was, all-wheel drive and that was a little bit luxurious, I guess. Is that even a word, luxurious? A luxury car? But that it wasn't going to be that expensive when I had to fix it, right? And I started looking into the market and I saw that Avis and Budget and Enterprise, they all had just a bunch of economy cars. So I started looking at the Turo app and saw that a lot of other hosts were also just sharing their economy cars. So the first car that I decided to buy for this business was a 2016 Hyundai Sonata Limited. Remember, this was in 2018. So having a 2016, that was a really nice new car. And I remember buying it from the Honda dealership. I got a good deal. I was working on my credit score and I decided to buy that car to open my first business, right? And it took me a while. I'm not gonna lie. It took me a while. I was debating on it, on opening that business for so long. And I feel like that's one of the main things that truly kills dreams. When you start to doubt yourself and you start to procrastinate and you start saying to yourself, yes, I'll do it one day. Yeah, next week. When I'm prepared, when I'm ready. Let me tell you something. You are never gonna feel truly prepared to do anything in life. I know you heard this before. It sounds a bit cliche, but it is true. So if you want to start your own business, start it now. You will be scared. You will feel nervous. You will feel anxiety. You will feel like, you're gonna feel down sometimes. Because like I said, everyone's gonna be doubting you. Yeah, some people might be like, yeah, follow your dreams and all that, but you don't really feel it, right? You feel alone for the most part. So I said to myself, fuck it, I have to do it. I cannot watch any more YouTube videos about how to open an LLC. I can't just be watching YouTube videos about how to talk to people. Think about it. I was 18 years old at the time. I was scared to even talk to strangers, right? And then I said, I have to do something. I can't just be pushing this idea, till next week, till next month, till next year. Because if I don't start now, I will never start. So I remember going into the Honda dealership to buy a Hyundai that I had seen there. And I got a really good deal out of it. The interest rates were nowhere near as high as they are today. Like I said, we're talking about 2018, so COVID wasn't even a thing. And then I decided to go into my bank, and that's when I started creating relationships with the bank. And one thing that I've heard from interviewing millionaires here in California is that having relationships with banks is very important. Having relationships with people in general is very important, right? But I started creating that relationship with the bank, and especially with the finance manager, right? Because once you start making some sort of relationship or friendship with the finance manager, they start to give you tips. They start to help you out. They start to see you not as a customer, but as a friend. And that's a really good feeling, because then they start to, when someone is telling you a secret and they're like, well, I think you should do this instead of that way, when they lower their voice, because they're trying to tell you something, they're giving you a juicy secret. So I started developing those interpersonal skills, those communication skills, that charisma. I think that is the best way of saying it. You have to develop charisma, right? To talk to people, to not only talk to the people that are renting your cars, but also to the people that you're going to be working with money-wise. So I went into the bank, got a really good deal, and then a friend of mine was working at the Honda dealership, and he gave me an amazing deal on the car as well. So overall, I was very happy with the purchase. That's when I decided to start renting my vehicle through the Turo platform. Now, I made a big mistake at the time. I no longer have that vehicle, but I remember having that vehicle under my personal name. Not a single insurance wanted it to insure the cars, knowing that they were gonna be renting out. I called a lot of places, and there was one actually that said that they would insure my vehicle, but it was gonna be an extremely high, monthly payment. So I decided to take the risk, and on top, Turo has its own insurance. But I highly recommend that if you're gonna start this business, that you get some sort of insurance outside of the Turo insurance. Now, at the time, Turo had a limit of 100 miles that you would get for free. I believe it was per day. So you would get 100 miles free every day. After that, if you were to pass those 100 miles, you could set the amount that you could charge the people if they were to pass those miles. For example, if someone would rent to your car for 3 days, so they would get automatically 300 miles, but then they took a long trip, right? It was a 500-mile long trip. You could set the extra miles to be 50 cents, the additional mile 20 cents. I believe it was up to $1. So if you were to set it up to $1 and they would drive 200 miles additionally from the 300 miles, then you could charge them $200. So that was really nice, right? That was the profit. If you were to set it up at, 50 cents, and they were to drive an additional 200 miles, then you would make an additional $100, right? So I remember at first I put my car on the Turo app. Then I listed it for the average price that I would see other cars in the same, price point. And I remember the first time that I got my first customers, I guess. It was a couple who was visiting New Mexico. They were visiting New Mexico, and they were, a bit hesitant because my car had no reviews. And at the time, Turo was kind of a new platform. And I was also a bit nervous because, it was the first time that someone was renting my car. So, and they had never used Turo before. I had never. So it was a bit complicated. So they decided to book my car. I remember setting it a bit lower than the rest of the cars on the market because I just wanted it to get that first experience. I wanted to get my car out there, right, and see how it would go. So I remember setting everything on the app. I would highly recommend. There are tons of tutorials on YouTube about how to start on Turo. So I would highly recommend that if you are planning on starting to rent your cars on Turo, that you take some of your time and go on YouTube and learn as much as you can about insurance. Study the market, right? You have to study the market of where you're planning on renting your cars. The same thing that works for New Mexico is not going to work for Texas or Arizona or Utah or Nebraska or California or Miami, right? So study your market. Make sure that you know exactly what type of cars you're buying. So this car, the Hyundai Sonata Limited, was very nice. Like I said, it was a 2-year-old car. It was the limited edition trim. So it was very nice on the outside and on the inside. It was such a nice car to drive, honestly. Hyundai has been improving big time. Hyundai and Kia have been improving big time. But like I said, I wanted it to just get the cars out there. So they rented my car, and I remember telling them that I would meet them outside of my job. I had a regular full-time job. I was a floor manager at a Brooks Brothers store. For the people that don't know what Brooks Brothers is, it was like the competition. It was like the first Ralph Lauren, basically. Ralph Lauren actually was a sales associate at a Brooks Brothers store. That is the oldest retail store in America, literally. It was around for 200 years. It existed before the Statue of Liberty, before the first baseball game ever, before the Big Apple was a thing in New York. We're talking about 200 years ago. And I remember, I was a floor manager at 18 years old. So that was a pretty unique experience as well. But, I was a hustler. I was really good at selling. It was a selling job. And I was really good at talking to people. I feel like that's what really helped me get into this business, because I was a really good salesperson. I was a really good communicator. I knew how to convince people on how to buy more. Sometimes people would go in there just looking for a shirt, and usually the shirts were around $200 or so, and they would be walking out with $1,000 of product, things like that. I was really good at convincing people on buying, the product. So I feel like that really helped a lot too. And when I rented my first car, I told them to meet me at the outlet mall where I was working, because I didn't want them to go into, my personal house. Sometimes when you rent cars, why does my hat look all crooked? Sometimes when you rent some of the cars on Turo, the host might tell you that they want to meet you at their personal house, which is fine. Or they might tell you that they want to meet you at a parking lot, a public parking lot, which is also fine as well. So they arrived at the outlet mall, and when they got there, I remember asking for their driver's license and making sure that I was taking pictures. I took probably like 300 pictures of the outside and the inside of the car to make sure that I would get every single detail. I also told them that they should be taking pictures as well, so that way they were covered. I took pictures of the dashboard, making sure that the gas was completely full. I took pictures of the miles. I took pictures of everything, the interior and the exterior. So make sure that you take as many pictures as possible when you're renting a car. Not only if you're the one renting it out, but also if you are the customer and you're renting a car from someone else. Make sure that you take as many pictures as possible, and always ask, are there any dents that I should be aware of, right? I should do not disturb. Let's see. Sorry, guys. So make sure that you're taking as much, pictures as possible to make sure that you're covered. Sorry, I was getting a FaceTime call. So I did that. I gave them the keys and they left. I was nervous because I'm like, please, I don't want to have a car accident on my first time renting my own vehicle out there. And they left. Everything was fine. I believe it was for like 3 days or so that they rented my car. The second day, I remember this like if it happened yesterday. I was at work. saw my phone ringing. I saw that it was them, and I said, an incident happened. Sure enough, they told me that they went on a dirt road that was really tight, and I guess one of the branches from a tree broke the side mirror, and that the car was scratched, the mirror was broken, and I had to file an incident report. So that was my luck. My very first time renting a vehicle, I had that incident. Thankfully, it wasn't a big deal. It was a little bit of paint, and the window was cracked, so we had to replace that. So I contacted Turo. Turo was really good at guiding me. I've heard some horrible stories about Turo with me. I have nothing but good things to say about them. They were really good. And we were able to sort things out. I believe they had to pay a deductible. But after they returned the vehicle, I saw it. And then I was like, well, I have to figure out how to fix this. I put it out of offline, I guess you could say, from the app. That way no one could rent it. That way I could get it fixed. I was able to take it to a shop. They fixed it right away. Then, I decided to buy my second vehicle, which was a 2014 Dodge Charger RT. For those people that do know what I'm talking about, that car came in an all-wheel drive version. So think about it. It was a V8 5.7 liter naturally aspirated V8 with all-wheel drive system. They stopped making those cars for the public in 2018. You can still find newer Chargers V8 all-wheel drive, but those are only police cars, right? So my car was an extremely nice, beautiful car. I've always wanted a Charger. I was debating between getting a BMW or that Charger. I ended up getting a great deal from CarMax for that Charger, so I ended up buying it. And I remember feeling extremely happy because not only was business doing really good, because my Hyundai after that started renting a lot, I wanted to get this Charger and put it on the platform. The business was doing really good because of the miles. Now, in 2025, I believe you're getting 200 miles per day instead of 100 miles per day. That's when I was making the majority of the money. I was putting my cars so low because I was making more money from the actual miles than from renting the cars out there. And I would always ask this to people. Why are you renting my car? And that's a question that a lot of people don't usually ask, right? Why wouldn't you be asking this to the customers that are buying from your business? What are you renting? You're renting a car, Who are you renting it from? This dude that I don't know. Where are you renting it from? The app, right? So those are a lot of questions that could be answered, But why are you renting the car, and why are you renting my car specifically, right? Obviously, you're renting the car. Why are you renting a car? Is because you need transportation. But why did you choose my car, right? I feel like that is something that I learned from that business. Why are you buying my product? That's what surveys usually ask. Big corporations usually ask, why did you choose our product? So keep that in mind when you're opening a business, when you're starting a business in general. It doesn't matter what you're selling. Are you selling flowers? Why are you buying my flowers? I'm not the only flower store in the city. Why did you come here? But don't ask that question straight up like that. Try to make it into a friendly conversation. Thank you so much for renting my car. I really appreciate that. I hope you had a great experience. Where are you from? What brings you to New Mexico? Try to get that information from people. What brings you here to whatever state you're living in? What brings you to New Mexico? Oh, did you have fun? Oh, what happened with the car? Was it driving good? Oh, I'm glad to hear that, And can I ask, why did you decide to rent my car, What stood out? Why did you choose this car over the other Hyundai Sonatas, over the other newer models that were on the app, And they will usually tell you if you ask the right way. You should always be asking, why are you buying my product? Why are you seeing me? Why are you watching me, right? Why are you interested in my business, my product? That question will give you a lot of data that you can work on. So a lot of people were saying that it was a comfortable ride. A lot of people were actually taking it to the city of Albuquerque. I was living in Santa Fe, which is an hour north of Albuquerque. I'm sure you heard of that city before because of the Breaking Bad series, Better Call Saul, that was all filmed in the city of Albuquerque. So a lot of people were actually not even taking them on dirt roads. They were just going to the city. They were going to a few, resorts that we have in New Mexico, and that's that, right? I started offering the package of delivering the car for an additional fee to the airport and even taking it to the city of Albuquerque. So I would drive 60 miles to the city of Albuquerque and charge them an additional, $120, $150 to deliver the car 60 miles from Santa Fe to Albuquerque. And they were paying that. And then on top of that, they would sometimes rent my cars. I remember one time I got my Hyundai Sonata rented for about 4 days. And that was 400 miles. But they went all the way to Louisiana, and that was a lot of miles. And I was very honest about it. In the description, it said, you are only getting 100 miles per day. After that, you're going to be getting charged this amount of, miles. It's going to be 50 cents per mile or something like that. And I remember this couple went to Louisiana, they drove it, and then they came back, and then at the end that was like $1,200 or something like that because of the miles. So I ended up making $1,200 in just 4 days. Obviously, yes, the cars do wear and tear, so I highly recommend that you also talk to a tax specialist to see how you can write off the depreciation of the cars. And you also have to be really good at maintaining the cars. You should definitely create that relationship with a mechanic shop, or you should learn how to do basic general, mechanic repairs if you're gonna be getting into this business. That way you're not spending thousands of dollars on repairs, right? Because you will have to be changing the cars, you will have to be doing oil changes. So I highly recommend that you get some sort of, I know that there are shops out there who are doing subscriptions now, right? You pay some sort of subscription and then you get unlimited oil changes or something like that. I think Beagle Tires has something like that where you get free rotations and then tires. So I highly recommend that you start looking at a lot of those options, that you start building relationships with mechanic shops as well. So they drove my car for I think it was a good 100 miles, a couple of hundreds of miles. And I ended up making $1,200 out of a 4-day rental. I also remember a guy rented my car for an entire month, right? But he didn't drive it that much. So that's when I learned that perhaps adjusting the price a little bit, you have to learn how to adjust the price with the miles, right? Because that car was rented away for an entire month, but he wasn't driving it that much. And so you have to always study, the market. You have to study the people that you're renting it to. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Like I said, I started this when I was 18 years old, man. And I was fucking scared. I was scared. But I said, I have to do something with my life. I can't just be, hoping to see that the right time is gonna come, It's better to regret something that you did than regret something that you never did, right? So I don't regret it. That business ended up failing, but I'll explain why later on. But, at the time I was learning, I've never opened a business before. After that, the business was really good. People were traveling to New Mexico, and I decided to buy a 2018 Chrysler 300 in 2019. So think about it. The cars were still brand new, basically. A 2018 Chrysler 300S in 2019. It was a very beautiful car, very comfortable, very nice to drive, all-wheel drive. And in New Mexico, a lot of people get surprised that we get snow in New Mexico, but we do. It does get cold. And they think that it's just like Arizona or, parts of Texas where they never get any snow. Santa Fe is the highest capital city in the entire country. We are about 7,000 feet, in altitude. So yes, it can get very cold in New Mexico, and we could get a lot of snow sometimes. So you definitely need an all-wheel drive car if you're living in New Mexico, not only because there are dirt roads, but you can get a lot of snow as well. So I decided that the Hyundai was gonna be the only front-wheel drive vehicle because I didn't want to have any struggles during the winter time. So the Charger was all-wheel drive. It was a beast of a car. I missed that car so much. I actually regret selling it. And then I had the Chrysler 300S, which was also an all-wheel drive car. Business was good. Business was booming. Money was coming in, but there's no light without dark, and there's no joy without pain, right? You have to have bad times in order to appreciate the good times. So I remember 2019 was such an amazing year. I was able to get an apartment all by myself, and we leased this apartment for a year, and I liked it because I had 4 vehicles at the time, 3 that I was renting, and my daily driver, I guess. It was a project car that I still have. It was a 2005 Mitsubishi Eclipse manual transmission. So I had 4 cars, and as you know, when you're living in an apartment complex, they usually have a limit of how many cars you could have per apartment, right? You can usually have 1 or 2 vehicles. And this apartment complex did not have a limit of how many cars you could park there. So I had 5 cars parked actually, because I had 2 daily drivers plus the 3 cars that I was renting out. So I had 5 cars in total, and I just remember parking them all right in front, and everyone around knew that those were all my cars, right? And I remember feeling so badass. You feel like that sometimes when you're winning in life. You're winning, money's coming, but because of that, you start to slack a little bit. And at the time, I had no mentors, no one that was guiding me, so I was making a lot of mistakes, trying to learn from those mistakes. So I highly recommend as well that you look for some sort of mentors financially or just in general. Whatever industry you want to get into, you should definitely look into mentorship. Mentorship is important. I learned that from interviewing a couple of millionaires, right? I usually ask them, what's more important, having a college degree or having a good mentor? And they always say, if you're gonna be a doctor, a lawyer, things that do require a degree, well, there's not a way to get around that. But for the most part, it's important to have a good mentor. The millionaires are telling me that. If you guys don't believe me, go check out my TikTok, go check out my Instagram, Gran Turismo LT, go check out my Snapchat. They're literally telling me that it's important to have a mentorship. Millionaires. So, look for a millionaire. I'm sorry. Look for a mentor. Well, you can look for a millionaire too, right? But look for a mentor, because that will become very helpful eventually. So, I had no mentors. I was making so many mistakes on my own, but I was putting all my eggs in one basket. And I was already thinking about buying another car. I feel like I was going too fast, but at the time I was like, what could go wrong? Money's coming in, business is good. What could possibly go wrong? 2019 was such an amazing year that in 2020, January of 2020, I decided to go to Las Vegas. Why not, right? Las Vegas, Nevada, where you can go and spend money and have a good time and relax and chill, relax and have fun and blah, blah, blah. January of 2020, I remember telling myself, this is going to be an amazing year. This is going to be such a good year. There's absolutely nothing that could go wrong. I'm going to, surpass my numbers. I'm going to get not 1, but 2 vehicles on this year. I'm going to grow the business. Everything is going to be good. I finally made it. I finally escaped my 9 to 5. Remember, I was still working as a floor manager. So I was, for the most part, whenever I would rent my cars out, I would take it to work, go to work, and then whenever the time would, come close to, if I was renting out a car at 3 p.m., I would usually take my break at that time. I would say that I would go smoke outside. I wasn't really smoking, but I would say that I would go take a smoke break, things like that. Go outside for 15 minutes, hand out the keys, take the pictures, and then they would take the cars. And then I would, get a friend to give me a ride back home. Whenever the cars would be delivered, if I was working, I would just do the same thing. Say, hey, I'll be right back. I'm going to go on my lunch, my break, a smoke break, whatever, 15 minutes. And if I was off, then, I was working and living really close. My home and my job were really close to each other. So, everything was good. I was creating this system. The only thing where I would struggle a little bit was when I would have to deliver the car, 60 miles away, because what if I had to work? So sometimes I would say, hey, I'm going to be a little bit late. I was doing my best to, not let that interfere with my job, because that was my source of income. So I remember in 2020, January of 2020, telling myself, this is going to be such an amazing year. So we decided to take a trip to Las Vegas. And I remember this, like if it happened yesterday. When I was in Las Vegas, I remember just seeing on my phone and on the news, on the TV, and everyone was talking about this thing called the coronavirus, right? COVID-19. A virus that is in China still, it's on the other side of the world. Some people are getting sick, but well, it's on the other side of the world. Why would it affect us here, right? So I was like, yeah, it doesn't really matter, whatever. And the entire time that I was in Las Vegas, I just remember seeing this, coronavirus. But think about it. People were out there normally without a mask, things like that. When I come back, I start seeing that a lot of people are canceling trips because they don't want to travel. And then February comes in, and then March. March was the complete shutdown for a lot of states. March was when the entire world pretty much froze, right? So that was definitely an experience because a lot of people were canceling their trips. I didn't have any income. I wasn't saving any money, so that is something that you really need to think about as well. I was young. I was stupid. I was making mistakes. I had no mentors. So I was always thinking that money was gonna come in like nothing, right? Why should I save? Business is good. More cars are gonna come in. Rentals keep booking and people keep booking and booking and booking. Why should I save money, right? Why should I have some cash on the side, right, in case of an emergency? So that was really stupid of me. I started drinking a lot and all that, so I didn't have any money saved. A lot of money was coming in, and I was spending a lot of money as well. So also keep that in mind. I'm telling you guys all of this so you guys don't make the same mistakes that I did. I wish someone would have made a live stream or a video like this, because it would have been helpful to understand, every time you watch a video on the internet, and please let me know, comment if you have heard this before. I want you guys to like this stream, like this video, wherever it is that you're watching, like and comment if you have heard this before. I have a passive income business where I work for 6 hours a week, 10 hours a week, and then the rest of the time I get to chill. That is not true. There isn't a single business out there where you can just make thousands of dollars per week and work 10 hours a day or 10 hours a week and you can just have a relaxed time. That is not true. Do not fall for that. That is a scam. People are trying to scam you. People are trying to sell you a course. That is not true. If you talk to a millionaire, they will tell you that they are still working their asses off today. As millionaires, they're still working hard. They're not just working 12 hours a week, 20 hours a week, and then they get to relax in the beach drinking margaritas. That is not true. I know you hear that all the time on social media. People saying, yes, I have an ATM business. I have a vending machine business that I only maintain for a little bit of time and it's creating me $5,000 a week and I only work 6 hours a week and blah, blah, blah. That is not true. That is the recipe for you to fail in your business. So don't fall for that trap because that is not true. I'm telling you as someone who has spent time with millionaires, who has interviewed people, they work their asses off and they're already millionaires. They're working harder than you. They're working 12 hours a day as millionaires. And you think you can just work for 12 hours a week and you're gonna be making thousands of dollars? Come on, be real. If you don't believe me, go watch my videos. You can go watch this YouTube channel called The School of Hard Knocks, right? That's also a guy who goes and interviews people, millionaires, billionaires, right? So they will tell you, the millionaires will tell you themselves that that is not true. In 2020, I lost it all. March 2020, I lost it all. I had my cars parked. I didn't know what to do with them. Thankfully, I was able to sell them. Not for a profit, but I was able to break even. And on one vehicle, I think I only lost like $1,000 that I had to pay, which wasn't that bad, right? So I was able to sell the Charger back to, I think I sold it to Carvana. And the Chrysler, I sold it to CarMax. The Hyundai, I ended up selling it to a dealership. And it was good because I had put a lot of miles on those cars. But at the time, if you guys remember, cars were appreciating a lot. They were appreciating a lot. And there was a lot of banks that were working with people who had loans so that you could come up with a payment plan. So I was able to go talk to my finance manager and tell them the situation, and I was able to sell my cars. So that was a very interesting period of my life where I opened my business. I thought I had made it, and life said, no, sir, you have not made it yet. You still need to learn lessons, right? You can't be a lazy piece of shit. You can't just be a lazy person. You can't expect to relax, to not save money. Every single lesson that you learn through your life, you have to apply it, and you have to see the good in it, right? So I was able to sell my cars, and break even. I remember I was able to sell the Dodge Charger after putting a lot of miles on that car because I was also driving that. That's the car that I would drive the most. On top of being rented out, I would also drive it a lot. So it had more miles and it was way older because at this point it was 2014 and I remember I sold it in the middle of 2020. So it was an older car and I was still able to sell it. Not at a profit, but at least to break even, right? Keep in mind, these cars had thousands of miles more than when I bought them. And the cars usually depreciate, right? A Chrysler 300 depreciates really bad, and I didn't know that at the time. Hyundais depreciate really bad, and I didn't know at the time, right? So I would highly recommend that you also try to get cars that don't depreciate a lot or talk to a tax specialist to see how you can use that depreciation to your benefit, to the benefit of your business. I'm not the most qualified person to talk about taxes. So once again, I highly recommend that you go talk to a tax specialist and see how they can help you with any business that you want to open in 2025. So that's the story of how I opened my car rental business when I was 18 years old, how I had it for 3 years, all the lessons that I learned. I remember having maybe like 3 accidents overall. So that was good. I didn't have that many accidents. I had one person smoking weed inside of the car, so I had to take it out. I charged them a $500 smoking fee. And I took it to a place to get a detail and get the smell out. And at the same time, I was like, well, you know what? They're going to detail it. Might as well. And I paid $100 for it. So I kept $400. So it could be a very profitable business. Now, like I said, I was making most of my money from the miles because at the time, people that were renting out the cars were only getting 100 miles for free. Now they're getting 200 miles, right? So now you're not making as much money from the miles because if they rent your car for 3 days, they're getting 600 miles for free. 600 miles that they can drive your car. So I think now you should really look into your market and see how you can adjust the price when you're renting out vehicles on Turo. I've heard some bad stories about the platform, so I'm not here to convince you that you should definitely rent your cars on Turo, right? I've heard some bad reviews, I've heard some bad things, but I'm talking from my own personal experience that I had a really good experience when I was dealing with the insurance side on Turo. So that was it, you guys. I hope you guys liked the stream, the video. Make sure to like and comment. Let me know if you guys got some valuable information about this. I also had an ATM business in 2022. So I was around 23 years old, 24 or so, which that was really interesting as well. Let me know if you guys want me to make a video out of the ATM business that I had. That was a really interesting period of time of my life as well. And you know, that I learned a lot from that business. I just want to see if everything is looking good here. Yep, everything's looking good. Perfect. All right, so I hope you guys liked the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know if you guys want me to make a video on my ATM business. I'll see you guys in the next one.